Picture this. You're a young bride named Maris, barely 15 winters old, standing in the doorway of a stone cottage in 1347 AD. The night air is thick with the scent of damp earth, and your breath catches in your throat as your new husband, Eric, approaches your marriage bed. The rushes beneath your bare feet crackle with each nervous step. Candlelight flickers across his weathered face, casting shadows that dance along the stone walls. His clothes are rough, worn from a life spent working the fields, but there's a strange gleam in his eyes. He's nearly twice your age, chosen by your father for his 3 pigs, his half-acre of barley, and the stability he offers. You're barely old enough to know what this night will bring, yet everything you've been taught tells you it's your duty. Your hands shake as you clutch the rough woolen shift your mother stitched for this very night, the same shift that symbolizes the transition from childhood to womanhood. It feels heavier now, the fabric colder against your skin, a reminder of the responsibilities awaiting you. Hendrik's steps are slow but deliberate, his presence imposing in the dim light. But tonight isn't just about you. It's about the community that watches, unseen, from the other side of the wooden door. You are not alone in this moment. You are part of something far larger, something ritualistic. The consummation of this marriage isn't a private affair. It's an event that will be spoken of in hushed tones for days, perhaps weeks. Your family's reputation, your father's lands, your mother's honor, all of it hinges on what happens next. This, you quickly realize, is not your choice. It never really was. The night of the wedding, known to many as the first night, was treated as a public ceremony, almost a formality. The marriage bed, as sacred as it was, served more as a symbol of unity for land, property, and the future of the family than for love or romance. As Henrik stands before you, waiting for you to take the first step, you can't help but feel the weight of history, of tradition, pressing down on your shoulders. It's an unsettling feeling, the realization that what you've been told your whole life about love, about marriage, about intimacy, wasn't nearly as personal or private as you imagined. This ritual, common in your village, was less about passion and more about the binding of 2 families. It was a contract, an agreement that needed to be fulfilled in the eyes of all those watching. They would wait patiently, outside the door, until they heard the expected sounds, proof that you were, indeed, virtuous, and that the marriage was legitimate. No one, least of all you, knew exactly what to expect. Historians still argue whether this practice was widespread across medieval Europe, or whether it was just an exaggerated myth of the time. Some say it was a rite of passage, a necessary step in ensuring the survival of the family line. Others believe it was more of a strategic performance, designed to show the public that the union was not only legal but fruitful. What is certain, however, is that it left the bride in a state of vulnerability, often unsure, sometimes terrified, and always under watchful eyes. For many medieval brides, the marriage bed was the stage for an event that could be witnessed by a community who expected nothing less than the fulfillment of the contract. The sounds of the consummation were to be proof of the union's legitimacy. If the bride cried out in pain, it was seen as a mark of her purity, confirming that her virginity had not been lost before marriage. The bedchamber became a place not of intimacy but of public demonstration, where your personal discomfort and fear were overshadowed by the expectations placed upon you by your community and family. This was not unique to one region. In some areas, a group of women would be present during the first night to help guide the young bride through the process, offering encouragement and sometimes giving advice on how to endure the experience. The bride was often given instructions beforehand on how to behave, how to react, and even how to ensure the marriage was considered valid. It was a performance, one that had to be executed perfectly, lest the bride's honor be questioned. The practice continued for centuries, ingrained in medieval society as part of the grander social fabric. It wasn't until the Renaissance that such practices began to be questioned, but even then there were varying degrees of ritualized first nights in different regions, with some still clinging to the old ways. And yet the first night wasn't always a simple affair of bedchamber rituals. In some parts of Europe it was common for families to hire a virgin tester, someone who would check the bride's virginity before the wedding night. This ritual wasn't just about a man's satisfaction, but the validation of the woman's sexual purity for her new husband. It was believed that a woman's worth was intrinsically tied to her virginity, and failure to prove this could result in significant disgrace or even annulment of the marriage. This practice, while rare, highlights the strange extent to which sexual purity was intertwined with social status. As your husband approaches the bed, you can feel the entire weight of history pressing in on you. You have no choice but to fulfill your role in this social theatre, to prove that you have done your part in securing the family's future. The public nature of it all strips away any illusion of privacy, any hope for individual choice in such an intimate act. In this moment, you are not simply a young bride, you are an instrument of lineage, of legacy, and of duty. Historians still debate whether such customs were as widespread as legends suggest, or whether they were exaggerated by those who looked upon medieval society with horror. Some argue that the public nature of the first night was largely mythologized in later centuries, while others claim that it was very real, particularly in noble and royal circles. One thing is for certain: the concept of marriage during the medieval period was drastically different from our modern notion of love and companionship. So, as Henrik reaches the bed and the silence envelops the room, you brace yourself for what is to come, knowing that it's not just a personal moment, it's a communal event that will forever be a part of your family's story. You're not merely a young bride anymore. Tonight you become a part of a living history, one that stretches far beyond your small stone cottage and echoes through the ages. As you lie there, the flickering candlelight illuminating the room, you can hear the quiet murmurs from outside the door. The villagers, your family, and even the local priest, all are waiting. Their eyes are on you, whether you can feel them or not. The first night of marriage in the medieval world was often the most anticipated, not for the couple, but for everyone else. The culmination of years of family negotiations and alliances. It was meant to prove the strength and legitimacy of the union. Your father had spent years arranging this match, ensuring that your dowry was settled and that the marriage was witnessed by the proper authorities. In the dim light of the bedchamber you feel small, almost insignificant. Henrik, your new husband, isn't the man you've dreamed of. He's a stranger, someone you've barely spoken to before this moment. The role of a medieval bride was far from romantic. The idea of love had no place here. This was about family, power, and the securing of the future. Your marriage was a business deal, a way to forge alliances, grow wealth, and ensure survival. Marriage during medieval times wasn't about passion, and it certainly wasn't about mutual affection. For most people, it was simply a way to maintain and expand the family's social standing. It was a pact between families, a contract that solidified land, property, and influence. Love, if it came at all, came much later. The idea of romantic love, what we now consider the cornerstone of marriage, was alien to most medieval folk. The structure of the union was rooted in social and economic expectations, not personal feelings. Your marriage to Henrik was the result of this arrangement, designed to strengthen both families. You didn't have a say in it. The entire process, from the dowry negotiations to the public witnessing of your first night, was about business. The contract was the most important thing, and you were simply the piece of property being transferred from one family to another. The concept of consent in marriage, as we understand it today, was foreign in this time. Historians still debate whether the idea of marriage as property was more prevalent in the lower classes or among the nobility. The notion of dowries, which often involved the exchange of land, livestock, and money, was deeply ingrained in medieval society. In fact, many of the marriages among the elite were entirely transactional. In some cases, women were treated as little more than chattel, exchanged for a higher status or greater wealth. This wasn't just true for the peasants. Even royal marriages were often more about consolidating power than about the desires of the individuals involved. In your case, Henrik's family was small but stable, and his landholdings were modest. What he lacked in wealth, he made up for in practicality. He was not someone you would have chosen yourself, but his place in the community, his steady position as a farmer, made him an ideal match. The arrangement worked for both your families, and that was all that mattered. You were being married for the good of the land, not for your own happiness. But as the night progresses, something shifts. The public ceremony, the act of consummation, seems to carry more weight than you ever imagined. The community's eyes are on you, watching and waiting. This isn't just about proving your virginity or the legitimacy of the marriage. It's a demonstration of your family's success. If the night goes smoothly, with no issues or embarrassments, it will cement your place in the family. If anything goes wrong, if Henrik is unable to perform, or if there is any doubt cast on your purity, the consequences could be severe. You are reminded of the pressure. It's not just the ceremony that's at stake, it's your future. If Henrik, despite his awkwardness and nerves, manages to fulfill his role, your family's name will be solidified. If not, rumours could spread, and your status could be permanently damaged. In this world, reputation was everything. Without it, nothing else mattered. The silence is unbearable, yet it is punctuated by the sound of distant voices. The crowd outside the door waits for any sign that you've done your duty. The old tradition that the marriage bed must be witnessed was an odd and unsettling one. People would listen closely for any sounds, whether it was the groans of a couple struggling through their first night, or, in some cases, the sheer awkwardness of a couple who didn't know what to do next. There was always an element of superstition attached to the night as well. Fertility was often the main concern, and various rituals were practiced to ensure the bride would conceive quickly. Some cultures even believed that the couple must be blessed by the priest before consummating the marriage. These rituals, bizarre as they might seem today, were often seen as vital in securing the couple's future. Without them, the union would be seen as incomplete and the future of the family uncertain. Historians still argue whether such practices, like the public witnessing of the marriage bed, were more common in rural areas or reserved for the higher echelons of medieval society. What is known is that this tradition reinforced the idea that the marriage was not just a personal union, but a social and political event. The first night wasn't just about the bride and groom, it was about the community, the family, and their shared future. As you lie there, feeling the weight of centuries of tradition pressing down on you, it becomes clear that your personal desires and emotions are not what matter in this moment. You are a piece in a much larger game, a game that has been played for generations. And as Henrik finally takes his place beside you, the significance of this night, this act, becomes undeniable. It's not just the start of your marriage, it's the continuation of an ancient tradition that stretches far beyond your individual lives. The night of your wedding passes, and by morning you find yourself tangled in the confusion of mixed emotions. The village, still buzzing from the celebration, seems oblivious to the turmoil inside you. You fulfilled your duty, but the weight of it all lingers, settling deep within your chest. Henrik lies next to you, snoring softly, unaware of the storm swirling in your mind. He, too, has done his part, though for him it might have been a bit easier. He is a man who has lived a full life, who knows what is expected of him. You, on the other hand, were thrust into this unknown world. Your virginity a prize to be taken, your future now firmly tied to a man you barely know. As you lie there, thinking about what has just transpired, you begin to wonder how much of this is real, how much of this marriage is based on what you want, and how much is about what others expect of you. You are told, day in and day out, that this is how things must be. You are taught that your duty as a woman is to serve, to produce heirs, to carry on the family name. But no one ever teaches you what that truly means. No one ever explains what it feels like to be an object, to be used as a bargaining chip in a game you didn't ask to play. Historians still debate the real emotional toll this system took on women during the medieval period. Some say it was the norm, and women accepted it as part of their role. Others argue that the pressure was overwhelming, causing emotional trauma that has echoed through the centuries. The truth likely lies somewhere in between. After all, these customs didn't just appear out of thin air, they were born from centuries of societal need, needs that often sidelined the desires and emotions of those involved. And yet, as you stare up at the stone ceiling of your new home, you find yourself thinking about the future. What happens next? Will Henrik truly become a companion, someone you can rely on? Will your union turn into something that resembles love, or will it always be about duty and survival? You hope for something more, but in your heart you fear that this will never be the case. Your mother once told you that love wasn't something you would find in marriage, it was something you built. She spoke of companionship, of shared duties, of growing old together. But when you look at Henrik, you don't see that. You see a man who is as much a stranger now as he was the day you first met him. You see someone who will never be able to fill the void left by your hopes and dreams. This, you quickly realize, is the reality of medieval marriage. It's not about love. It's about survival, it's about keeping the family strong and ensuring that the lineage continues. The days after your wedding are a blur of expectations. Henrik becomes more distant as he adjusts to his new role as your husband, and you two retreat into yourself, feeling the weight of your new life. You are expected to perform your duties, run the household, tend to the garden, bear children, but no one ever asks if you're okay, if you're happy. You wonder how many other women in your village are going through the same thing, trapped in marriages that were never about them. There are, of course, moments of tenderness. Henrik is not a cruel man, and he does try to comfort you in his own way, but the emotional gap between you two remains, widening with every passing day. He doesn't understand the confusion you feel, the sense of loss that has settled deep inside you. To him, this is what marriage is, what it has always been. The act of consummation, the first night, is just one part of a much larger, more complicated system that has been in place for centuries. As the months pass, you begin to see the cracks in the system. You witness how women are treated in your community, how their worth is determined by the number of children they bear, the size of their dowries, and the purity they carry into marriage. You see how some women, like your neighbours, are treated with more respect than others, depending on the status of their husbands. You begin to understand that your role, as much as it has been defined for you, is also fluid. Your actions, your decisions, your willingness to comply will determine how you are treated in this strange, rigid society. But even as you learn, you begin to ask yourself, if love is not what matters, what is? If your worth is not defined by your feelings but by the children you bear and the wealth you contribute, then what is the purpose of it all? These questions nag at you, gnawing away at the carefully constructed walls of your world. And yet, as your first child stirs within you, the reality of your life begins to take shape. You are no longer the young bride at the wedding night. You are a mother, a wife, a pillar of the family, and that, in itself, is a victory. Historians continue to argue over the real nature of medieval marriages. Were they merely economic transactions, or was there room for personal fulfillment? Some claim that women did find satisfaction in their marriages, even if it didn't look like what we consider fulfillment today. Others believe that medieval marriages were suffocating, a system that only worked for the men who held the power. You're not sure where you stand, but what you know for certain is that the life you are now living is a far cry from the fairy tale you once dreamed of. But now, as you rock your baby in your arms, you wonder what the future holds for you. Will your children grow up in a world where love is as much a necessity as survival? Or will they too be bound by the same rules that have governed your life, their fates already decided before they even take their first breath? As the years pass, you grow accustomed to the rhythms of your new life. Henrik becomes less of a stranger and more of a familiar presence. He works the land, fixes the roof, and provides what little stability your family can afford. You in turn keep the house, care for the animals, and bear him children. This is your world now. It's simple, predictable, and in some ways comforting. But beneath the surface, there's a nagging sense of something missing. The connection you hoped for, the intimacy you dreamed of, never truly takes root. You've come to understand that your marriage is less about personal fulfillment and more about mutual obligation. Still, there are moments when you feel the weight of your role more acutely than others. As your children grow older, you watch them learn and play, and you wonder what kind of life they will lead. Will they be bound by the same traditions that have shaped your existence, or will they find a way to break free from the expectations placed upon them? Participating in this earliest day of, you begin to see glimpses of your own childhood in their eyes, the innocence you once had before you became part of the system, part of the tradition. It's a bittersweet realization, one that fills you with both hope and sadness. Historians still debate whether medieval marriages allowed for any real intimacy or emotional connection. Some argue that while love may have been absent from the union, affection and companionship still had their place. After all, people are human, and even in the harshest of conditions, there's a desire for companionship, for comfort. Others contend that medieval marriages were cold, transactional, and devoid of any real emotional bond, reduced to little more than a contractual arrangement between families. For you, it's hard to say. There are moments of tenderness, small gestures that hint at the possibility of something more than duty. Henrik, for all his stoic exterior, does occasionally show you kindness, when he brings you flowers from the garden, or when he holds your hand as you walk through the fields. It's not the passionate love you read about in stories, but it's something. You take what you can from it, because in this world, that's all you're given. But even in these moments, there's an underlying truth that you can't escape. Love is not a given here. It is something that must be earned, fought for, and sometimes it's simply absent. Your life, like that of so many women before you, is a mix of resilience and resignation. You are expected to endure, to carry on, to keep the family strong. In return, you find whatever moments of peace you can, whether through the simple act of caring for your children or the quiet moments shared with Henrik as you watch the sunset together. And then there are the darker moments, the times when you're reminded of just how little control you have over your own life. The local lord calls on your family, demanding resources, labour, and obedience, with little regard for your own well-being. You've learned to accept these demands as part of the larger system in which you live. In a society that values land, power, and lineage, individual desires mean little. The lord's demands are non-negotiable, and you must comply, no matter the cost. You've learned that the price of survival is often your own freedom, your own agency. But it's not just the Lord who holds power over your life. The Church too wields tremendous influence, dictating what is right and wrong, what is acceptable and what is sinful. The priest, who comes to bless your home and offer guidance, is another reminder of the rules you must follow. The Church teaches that marriage is sacred, that the bond between husband and wife is divinely ordained, but it also teaches that women are the weaker sex, meant to be subjugated to their husbands. The contradiction is palpable, but it is also unavoidable. You are expected to submit not just to your husband, but to the larger forces that govern your life, forces that you have little power to challenge. Despite all of this, there's a part of you that wonders, is this all there is? Is this life really all that awaits you, all that awaits your children? Or is there some way to break free from the expectations that have been placed upon you? There are whispers of rebellion in some parts of the kingdom, whispers of women who defy the rules, who find ways to take control of their own lives. You hear rumours of women who have taken lovers outside of marriage, of women who have fought for their rights and defied the Church's teachings. You wonder if that could be you, if you could somehow carve out a space for yourself outside the bounds of tradition. But then reality sets in. The consequences of defiance are severe and the risks far too great. To question the system is to risk everything, your marriage, your family, your life. You wonder too about your children. Will they grow up in the same world that you did, bound by the same rules? Or will they perhaps find a way to break free from the chains that have held you for so long? You hope, with all your heart, that they will. Historians often debate the role of women in medieval society. Were they truly oppressed, or did they find ways to exert influence within the confines of their roles? Some believe that women were completely subjugated, their lives entirely dictated by the men around them. Others argue that women, even in the most patriarchal societies, managed to carve out spaces of power, even if they were small. Perhaps it was through their roles as mothers, as caretakers, or as quiet rebels in their own right. For you, it's difficult to say, but one thing is certain: your life has been defined by the forces of tradition, by the expectations placed upon you, and though you've learned to accept your role, a part of you still longs for something more, something that lies just beyond the reach of your grasp. As the years go by, you continue to walk the fine line between submission and defiance. It's not an easy balance, but it's one you've learned to navigate. You have your family, your home, your land, But you also have your dreams, your desires, the small rebellions that you hold in secret. And as you look at your children, you wonder, will they be the ones to finally break the cycle? The seasons change, and with them so do the expectations placed upon you. As the years pass, you find yourself slipping into the role of wife and mother more comfortably, but not without a cost. The routine is predictable, and it's easy to get lost in the day-to-day tasks, cooking, cleaning, tending to the children, and managing the household. But there are moments, fleeting but sharp, when you catch yourself thinking of the life you could have had. What if you hadn't married Henrik? What if you had been allowed to choose for yourself? The thought nags at you, like an itch you can't scratch, and you wonder if anyone else feels this way, if anyone else secretly dreams of something more. You've learned to silence those thoughts, to push them down when they surface. Life in medieval times wasn't about individual desire. It was about family, legacy, and survival. Every action you take, every decision you make, is for the greater good of the family. Your feelings, your dreams, your ambitions, they are secondary to the expectations placed upon you. And yet, despite this, you can't help but wonder if there's more to life than just surviving. In the quiet moments, when Henrik is out working the fields and the children are napping, you allow yourself to daydream. You think about the women you've heard of, the ones who defy the rules, the ones who carve out their own paths. There are whispers, of course. Whispers of women who've taken lovers, who've refused to marry at all, who've defied the expectations of their time. But those whispers are dangerous. In a world that values obedience, such women are punished, their names tarnished, their lives ruined. Historians still debate the role of women in medieval society, whether they were truly trapped in their roles, or whether there were subtle ways in which they could exert power. Some argue that women were completely powerless, their lives dictated by men and society's strict expectations. Others believe that, even within the confines of their roles, women found ways to navigate the system, sometimes quietly pushing the boundaries, sometimes defying the rules in ways that were difficult to see. Perhaps it was in the strength they showed in their daily lives, the way they managed their households, or the way they cared for their children. Or perhaps it was in the quiet rebellions, the small acts of defiance that went unnoticed by the outside world. In your case, you find your rebellion in small things, a few extra moments of rest in the morning before the children wake up. A quiet glance exchanged with Henrik, one that says more than words ever could. A moment of tenderness, however rare, that you savour because it reminds you that there is still something of yourself left within this life. But as much as you long for more, you know that this is your reality now. The medieval world is harsh, unforgiving, and rigid. There is little room for deviation. To step outside the boundaries is to risk everything. Your reputation, your family, your very survival. The rules are clear, and everyone knows their place. You, as a woman, are expected to submit, to follow the path laid out for you by your family, your husband, and society. To stray from that path is to invite disaster. And as the years pass, you watch your children grow, each one becoming more like you than you ever thought possible. You see in their eyes the same quiet longing that you once had, and you wonder if they too will one day be trapped by the same expectations that have bound you. Will they too live out their lives in a world that values obedience over freedom, duty over desire? You can't help but wish for more for them, a world where they can make their own choices, where they can follow their own dreams without fear of punishment or shame. You dream of a world where love is more than a transaction, where marriage is a partnership between equals, where women are not just tools of reproduction but individuals with their own voices, their own desires. But you know that such a world is far off, a distant dream that may never come true. For now, all you can do is carry on. You raise your children, you care for your home, and you fulfill the role that society has carved out for you. And in those quiet moments when Henrik's not around, when the children are asleep, you allow yourself to dream of what could have been. You wonder if things might have been different, if you had been born into a different time, a different place, where women had more freedom, where they were more than just wives and mothers, where they were allowed to be themselves. But in the end, you know that these dreams are just that, dreams. The reality is much harsher, much more limiting. You are a part of a system that is as old as time itself. a system that defines your worth based on your ability to bear children and manage the household. Your desires, your aspirations, your identity, they are secondary to the needs of the family, the needs of the land, the needs of the community. Still, you persist. You carry on because that is what you are expected to do. You fulfill your duties as a wife, a mother, and a member of your community. You find solace in the small moments of happiness that you can create, in the quiet acts of defiance that go unnoticed by the world, and you hold on to the hope that one day things might change, that one day your children might live in a world where they can be free, where they can choose their own path, where they can live their lives on their own terms. Until then, you continue to navigate the complexities of medieval marriage and society, doing what you must to survive, to protect your family, and to keep the legacy of your ancestors alive. But in the depths of your heart, you know that you will always long for something more. As the years drag on, the landscape of your life becomes all too familiar, a rhythm you can no longer break. The seasons pass with a predictability that feels almost suffocating. The cows are milked, the garden is tended, the children grow older, and Henrik continues his work, the tasks of the day grinding on with a dull inevitability. Life in the medieval world doesn't allow for much deviation. There are no luxuries, no moments of true escape. There are only the responsibilities, the duties, and the weight of tradition. You can see it in the way your children watch the world. They've already begun to pick up on the patterns of life, to understand their place in the system that governs your village. You can see it in your sons, already learning the tasks they will inherit, and in your daughters, their futures already laid out before them. Their roles, like yours, will be defined by the family, by marriage, and by what is expected of them. You wonder if they too will one day long for more, or if they will come to accept their place without question. Historians still argue about how much choice women had in medieval times. Some argue that women were simply passive participants in their own lives, bound by the unyielding structure of society, while others claim that there were subtle ways in which women could exercise agency, even if it was limited. But no matter how you look at it, there was always an expectation for women to conform, to uphold the tradition, to maintain the family's honour, to bear children, and to manage the house. It was a role carved out for them long before they were born. In your own life, you've learned to navigate these expectations, to walk the fine line between submission and survival. You have found ways to carve out small moments of autonomy, moments when you can be yourself, when you can experience some semblance of freedom. It's not much, but it's enough to keep you going. You take solace in the quiet moments of reflection, in the brief moments when Henrik isn't around and the children are occupied with their own tasks. You can think, dream, and for just a moment you can imagine a world that is different from this one. But even in those fleeting moments, you can't shake the feeling that time is running out. Your youth has already slipped away, and with it your dreams of something more. The world around you seems to move in a never-ending cycle of labour, of duty, and of expectation. You are just another cog in the wheel of the system, and the thought of breaking free, of changing anything, seems impossible. The weight of tradition is too heavy, the rules too ingrained, and the consequences too great. As your children grow, you see in them the same quiet resignation that you've learned to accept. They are shaped by the world they live in, just as you were. They learn to follow the rules, to fulfill their roles, and to live in the shadow of their ancestors. You wonder if they will ever feel the same sense of longing that you do, if they will ever question the system that has defined their lives, or if they will accept their fate without question. One day, as you sit by the hearth, watching your children play outside in the yard, you find yourself thinking of your own mother. She was a woman who, like you, had learned to navigate the complexities of medieval life. She had borne children, tended to the household, and lived a life defined by the expectations placed upon her. And yet, despite everything, there was a quiet strength in her, a resilience that kept her going. It was something you never truly understood until now, when you realized that the strength she showed wasn't just for survival. It was for her family, for her children, for the future. And in that moment you understand that your role, though difficult and often painful, is not just about enduring. It is about something much larger. You are a part of a chain, a link in the great tapestry of life that stretches far beyond your own existence. Your children will carry on the traditions you have upheld, and they will pass them down to their own children. The cycle will continue, and though it may seem unchanging, it is in this continuity that you find your purpose. It's not the life you dreamed of, but it is the life you've been given, and in that there is a strange kind of peace. You have endured, you have survived, and you have provided for your family. The weight of history, of tradition, has shaped you, but it has not broken you. You are part of something much greater than yourself, and in that there is strength. Historians often debate the resilience of women in medieval society. Were they truly as powerless as they seemed, or did they find ways to resist, to adapt, to thrive? Some say women were trapped by the system, with little hope of escape. Others believe that women, even within the confines of their roles, found ways to assert themselves, to create meaning in their lives, despite the limitations placed upon them. For you, it's clear that survival, in any form, is an act of resistance. As you look at your children, you realize that they too will carry this legacy forward. They will live in a world defined by duty, tradition, and survival. But perhaps, just perhaps, they will find ways to carve out their own path, to challenge the system that has shaped them. For now, though, all you can do is continue. You will teach them what you know, raise them to understand the importance of family, of survival, and of tradition. And you will hope that one day they will be the ones to break the cycle, to live a life of their own choosing. As time marches on, you notice a subtle shift in your own mindset. What once seemed like an unchangeable fate now feels more like a long, winding road. There are still days when the weight of responsibility bears down on you, when the demands of family, land, and duty leave little room for yourself. Yet, somewhere beneath the exhaustion, beneath the endless chores and societal pressures, you've begun to understand something deeper. Your life, while defined by the roles assigned to you, is still your own. You may not be able to change the system that governs your world, but you can still find moments where you exercise control over your choices, your actions, and even your desires. It's the small things that give you this sense of agency. The way you manage the household, the little ways you can bend the rules without breaking them. You've learned to navigate the expectations placed upon you without losing yourself entirely. It's a quiet rebellion, one that goes unnoticed by the world, but it's enough to keep your spirit intact. And in these small victories, you've found a measure of peace. Historians often debate whether medieval women were passive victims of a rigid societal system, or whether they had subtle means of resistance and self-expression. While many believe that medieval women were constrained by their roles, some historians argue that women found ways to exercise power in seemingly small but significant ways. Perhaps it was through their ability to manage households, influence decisions within the family, or even navigate the social structure through informal networks. These women, they argue, were not simply passive participants, they were active agents in their own lives, finding ways to shape their circumstances even within the boundaries of their time. As you watch your children grow, you begin to wonder if they will see the world differently. Will they be content to follow in your footsteps, or will they break free from the patterns of the past? You hope for the latter. You hope that, someday, they will have the freedom to choose their own paths, to live lives that are not dictated by tradition or duty, but by their own desires and dreams. You know, the world is changing, albeit slowly, and that change, though imperceptible, is beginning to seep into the fabric of society. You can feel it in the way your children ask questions, the way they challenge the status quo, the way they look at the world with a sense of possibility. You see it most clearly in your daughters. They are growing up in a world that still values their role as wives and mothers, but they also see the women in your village who have defied the odds, women who, against all expectations, have found ways to carve out a space for themselves. Some have taken control of their own finances, others have pursued education or trades that were once reserved for men. These women are few and far between, but they are proof that change is possible, even in the most rigid of societies. As much as you want your daughters to be free from the confines of tradition, you also know that the world they live in will not be kind to those who defy the rules. The price of rebellion is steep, and the consequences of stepping outside the accepted norms can be dire. You can only hope that when the time comes, your daughters will be strong enough to face the challenges that await them. You teach them what you know, the wisdom you've gained through years of experience. You teach them how to survive, how to endure, and, most importantly, how to hold on to their sense of self in a world that demands conformity. Henrik, though he has been a steady and reliable presence in your life, remains a distant figure, consumed by the demands of work and the weight of his own expectations. He is a man of few words and even fewer emotions. You've learned to live with this, to accept it as part of who he is. But there are times, in the quiet of the evening, when you wonder if there was ever a chance for something more. You've never spoken of it to him, but you know that the emotional distance between you both has grown over the years. You have your moments, brief, fleeting moments of connection, but they are rare, like shooting stars streaking across a dark sky. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter. The world is bigger than you and Henrik, bigger than your marriage. What matters is the family, the land, the legacy that you will leave behind. You are a part of something much larger than yourself, and in this you find both a sense of purpose and a sense of resignation. There is no room for personal dreams in this world, no room for the pursuit of individual happiness. There is only the continuation of the family line, the preservation of tradition, and the maintenance of order. The more you reflect on it, the more you realize that your role, as much as it has defined you, has also given you a certain power. You are the matriarch of your family, the one who holds everything together. Without you, the family would fall apart. Your strength, your resilience, your ability to keep going despite everything, these are the things that have allowed you to survive. You may not have the freedom to live the life you dreamed of, but you have the power to shape the future of your family, to ensure that they are cared for and that they thrive. Historians often view medieval women through a lens of oppression and constraint, but you know that there is more to the story. Yes, the system is rigid, yes, the expectations are high, but within that structure there is a quiet strength that women like you have learned to harness. You may not have the power to change the world, but you have the power to shape your family's world, and in that you find a sense of fulfillment that no one can take away from you. As the seasons pass and your children grow, so too does the weight of your responsibilities. Your role as mother, wife, and homemaker becomes ever more entrenched in your daily life, and there are moments when it feels as though you are nothing more than a cog in a great, unyielding machine. The grind of daily chores, the care of the land, the tending to the animals, these duties have become second nature, almost mechanical. It's a rhythm you've grown accustomed to, a life of endless cycles and small victories, where even the simplest acts of survival become victories in themselves. Yet beneath the surface, something is stirring. It's the quiet whisper of rebellion, the longing for something more. It has always been there, buried deep within you, but it has become louder in recent years. It grows stronger in the moments when Henrik isn't around, when the children are occupied with their own tasks, and you have a rare moment to yourself. You realize that, while you have built a life, a family, and a home, you have also lost pieces of yourself along the way. Your dreams, your desires, and your ambitions, things you never thought you could pursue, have been buried under the weight of duty. You think of the women in your village who have, in their own quiet ways, found a measure of freedom. Women who have learned trades, who have managed their own lands, who have defied the traditional roles imposed upon them. You think of the whispers you've heard, of women who have become traders, or even those who have left their husbands, striking out on their own. These women have found ways to live outside the constraints of tradition, to carve out lives for themselves beyond the roles they were born into. Historians have long debated the role of women in medieval society. Some argue that women were completely subjugated, their lives dictated by the men around them and the systems of power that governed their communities. Others believe that women, even in such a rigid structure, found ways to exert influence, to negotiate within the boundaries of their world, whether it was through managing households, securing land, or finding ways to escape the rigid expectations of marriage. These women exercised a form of quiet resistance, navigating the system in ways that were difficult to see but powerful nonetheless. You've often wondered if you could ever be one of those women, if you could step outside the role that society has placed upon you. The idea of defying the system, of creating a life for yourself that is not defined by duty and survival, feels both exciting and terrifying. It's a thought you dare not voice, not even to Henrik, for fear of his reaction. After all, the rules have been clear from the beginning. Your worth lies in your ability to fulfill your duties, to bear children, to serve your husband, and to maintain the household. Any deviation from this path is unthinkable. But still, you wonder, what if there was more? What if, for once, you could be free to choose your own destiny, to live a life on your own terms? The thought is intoxicating, and it fills you with both a sense of possibility and dread. You have spent so many years sacrificing your own desires for the good of the family, for the good of the land, that the idea of pursuing your own dreams seems almost impossible. Yet the whisper of rebellion grows louder, and you begin to wonder if you could somehow find a way to break free, to build a life outside the constraints of your marriage and your role as a mother. You start to see the cracks in the system. You begin to understand that, while the world may not allow for great freedoms, there are small ways in which you can assert yourself. It might not be grand or dramatic, but there are moments, tiny flickers of independence that you can claim for yourself. Perhaps it's in the way you manage the household, in the decisions you make about how to raise your children, or in the quiet acts of defiance that go unnoticed by those around you. It's not much, but it's something. In the evenings, when Henrik has gone to bed and the children are asleep, you sit by the fire and think about the future. You think about your children and the world they will inherit. You wonder if, by the time they are adults, the world will be different. Will they, too, live their lives according to the rules of the past, or will they find a way to break free from the expectations placed upon them? You dream of a world where they can choose their own paths, where they can live with the same freedom that men do. You think of your daughters especially, and what kind of lives they will lead. Will they be content with the lives they are given, or will they, too, feel the quiet stirrings of rebellion, the longing for something more? You hope with all your heart that they will be able to carve out lives for themselves that are not dictated by tradition or duty. You hope that they will live in a world where they are free to choose their own futures, to pursue their own dreams, and to define their own worth. But as the days turn into years, you begin to accept the truth of your situation. The world is not going to change overnight. The system that has defined your life, that has shaped your marriage, your family, and your community will not be easily undone. The weight of tradition, of history, and of societal expectation is too great. You cannot escape it. And yet, as you watch your children, you feel a flicker of hope. Perhaps they will be the ones to change the world. Perhaps they will be the ones to live a life that is not defined by the rules of the past, but by their own desires and dreams. You have given them the foundation, the lessons, the strength, the resilience, and now it is their turn to build something new, something different, something free from the constraints that have bound you. Ima, you have spent years. You smile at the thought, a small, bittersweet smile. For now, though, you continue. You continue to live the life you've been given, to care for your family, to tend to the land, to fulfill your role. You will not stop dreaming, but you will also not forget your place in the world. For the time being, this is your life, and though it is far from perfect, it is yours. As the seasons pass and the years accumulate, you begin to see the slow, almost imperceptible shifts that occur not just in your life, but in the lives of those around you. Henrik, though he remains a man of few words, begins to soften in certain ways. The coldness that defined the early years of your marriage gives way to a tentative partnership. He may never be the romantic husband you once dreamed of, but he begins to see you less as a possession and more as an equal, a partner in the shared work of maintaining the household. It's not love, but it's something. Your children, too, grow in their own ways. The older ones are starting to ask more questions, to see beyond the immediate world they inhabit. Your sons, now old enough to take on more responsibility, are beginning to understand the weight of the land, the legacy they will inherit. They watch you, learning from your steady perseverance, even as you try to teach them to be more than what society expects them to be. And your daughters, though they are still young, begin to show signs of curiosity about the world beyond the fields, beyond the household. They listen to the whispers of other women in the village, women who have taken small steps towards independence, who have found ways to live outside the constraints of tradition. You see the flicker of rebellion in their eyes, the spark of ambition that you once had but have long since silenced. It fills you with both pride and fear. You want more for them. You want them to be free from the confines of the system, to have a voice in a world that often refuses to hear them, but you also know the risks. The world is not kind to those who challenge the established order. It punishes them, shuns them, and sometimes even destroys them. You fear that your daughters will face the same harsh reality that you did, the same crushing weight of expectation. And yet, you cannot help but hope that they will find a way to navigate this world differently. Historians have long debated the nature of medieval family life, especially in relation to women. Were they truly powerless, or did they find subtle, quiet ways to assert their authority? Some argue that women were, in essence, the backbone of the family unit, even if they lacked formal power. They held the household together, managed the day-to-day responsibilities, and were the primary caregivers. But others contend that medieval society was so rigid, so controlled by men and by tradition, that women had no real agency, no voice in their own lives. They were tools for reproduction and caretaking, no more. For you, the truth lies somewhere in between. You have exerted control over your household, your children, and even, in some ways, Henrik, but you have done so within the constraints of a system that offers no room for deviation. Your actions, while powerful within your own family, are limited by the rules of the larger society, and still, you wonder if your daughters will find a way to break free of this, to chart their own course in a world that expects them to be nothing more than wives and mothers. You wonder if they will be able to do what you could not, live a life of their own choosing, free from the shackles of tradition. As you watch them grow, you also see the seeds of change sprouting in the world around you. The larger society is shifting, slowly but surely. The Renaissance is beginning to take root, with its new ideas about human potential, individual rights, and the questioning of traditional norms. You hear rumors of women in distant cities who are learning to read and write, who are engaging in business, who are challenging the very structure of society. These whispers are faint, distant, but they spark something within you. For the first time in years, you feel a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, things are beginning to change. You share these thoughts with Henrik one evening as the two of you sit by the fire. He listens, not understanding fully, but perhaps sensing the shift in you. He asks with a quiet curiosity if you would ever want to leave the farm, to go to one of those cities where women are learning to write, to speak, to be more than wives. The idea catches you off guard. You never expected Henrik to ask such a question, much less entertain the possibility of change, but there it is, hanging in the air between you. For a moment you consider it. You think of the possibilities, of a life where you could live for yourself, not just for the family. You imagine what it might be like to have a voice in the world, to be able to speak and be heard, to make choices that are your own and not dictated by the roles of wife and mother. The thought excites you, fills you with the same kind of longing you had when you were a young bride, before marriage and motherhood defined every part of you. But then the reality settles back in. You have children, a husband, a farm to manage. The world you dream of is still far beyond your reach. The risks are too great, the consequences too dire, and so you push the thought away, but it lingers in your mind, a reminder that things don't have to stay the way they are. Henrik, sensing your hesitation, falls silent. He doesn't press the issue, but he watches you closely, as if waiting for you to make a decision. He doesn't fully understand the gravity of what you're thinking, but he can feel the shift in you. He too has begun to change, in his own quiet way. Perhaps, in time, he will understand what it means for you to seek more than just survival, more than just duty. For now, you return to your life as it is, managing the household, caring for your children, and fulfilling the role you were born into. But the dreams remain, the whisper of rebellion, the desire for freedom, the hope for something more. It all continues to grow, deep within you, waiting for the moment when you can finally break free. Historians still debate whether women in medieval times were truly passive, or whether they found ways to subtly resist the constraints placed upon them. Some argue that women like you were forced to accept their roles, while others believe that there were quiet, hidden forms of resistance, ways in which women claimed power and autonomy within the limits of their worlds. You've come to understand that, in your own way, you have resisted. You've carved out a life for yourself, a life that is yours, even if it isn't the life you dreamed of. And you hope that someday your children will be the ones to take the next step, to create a world where they can truly be free. Years pass in the quiet ebb and flow of daily life. The seasons change, and with each passing year, your children grow older, your home becomes more familiar, and your marriage, though not the passionate union of fairy tales, begins to find its own rhythm. Henrik remains the same, steady, reliable, a man of routine and purpose. You've learned to accept him for what he is, just as he has learned to accept you. It's not love in the traditional sense, but it's something. It's partnership, it's respect, and in its own way, it's a kind of contentment. You no longer yearn for what you once thought you needed. The world has shaped you, and you have shaped your place within it. The children, though, they are the real mystery. You watch them with a mixture of awe and apprehension. They are growing up in a world that, while not drastically different from the one you knew, is beginning to shift in small but important ways. The whispers of change that once seemed so distant are now beginning to be felt in your home, in your village, and in your own heart. You hear rumours of women becoming more involved in trade, in education, in politics. You hear of women in nearby towns and cities learning to read, to write, to speak out, and you wonder if the time will ever come when your own daughters will have the opportunity to do the same. You begin to see the quiet stirrings of independence in them. They ask more questions now, questions about the world beyond the farm, beyond the role of wife and mother that seems so inevitable. They are curious, eager to learn, and for the first time you allow yourself to hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, the world will be different for them. Perhaps they will have the chance to live lives that are not defined by tradition, by duty, by the roles that have always been prescribed to women. But there is still fear. The world is slow to change, and the risks of rebellion, of stepping outside the boundaries of tradition, are high. You know this better than anyone. You've lived it, you've survived it. The consequences of defying the system can be severe. You've seen it in the stories of women who dared to break from tradition, women who were punished, shunned, or worse. The world is harsh, and the price of defiance is steep. You've seen the sacrifices that have been made by others who dared to challenge the rules. Some have faced exile, some have faced violence, and some have simply been erased from history. And yet, despite the fear, despite the dangers, there is something else that pushes you forward. A quiet, undeniable force that refuses to be silenced. It's the same force that has kept you going all these years, the force that has allowed you to survive, to endure, to carve out a life for your family. It's the desire for more, the yearning for something beyond survival, beyond duty, beyond tradition. Historians often debate the role of women in medieval society. Were they simply passive, obedient participants in a system that had no place for their desires? Or did they find ways, no matter how small, to assert themselves? Some argue that women were little more than property, their lives dictated by the men around them. Others believe that women, even in the most oppressive of systems, found ways to exert power and influence. It might have been through their management of the household, their ability to navigate the social systems of the time, or even through the quiet ways in which they passed on knowledge to their children. Whatever the case, women in the medieval world were not entirely powerless. As you look at your daughters, you wonder, will they be the ones to break free from the constraints that have defined you, that have defined all women in your family for generations? Will they have the opportunity to live lives of their own choosing, to be more than just wives and mothers? You hope with all your heart that they will. You hope that one day they will be able to choose their own path, free from the burdens of tradition, free from the roles that society has set out for them. But you also know that the world is not kind to those who defy it. You know the risks, you know the dangers, and so you teach your daughters what you know, how to survive, how to endure, how to navigate the world as it is. You teach them to be strong, to be resilient, to be patient, but in the quiet corners of your heart, you also teach them to dream. You teach them that there is more to life than survival. There is more to life than duty. There is more to life than tradition. You don't know what the future holds for them, for your family, or for the world. The road ahead is uncertain, and the risks of change are great. But you have hope. For the first time in a long time, you have hope that the world will be different for your children, that they will have the chance to live lives that are not defined by the rules of the past, but by their own dreams. The world is slow to change, but change is coming. It may take time, it may take sacrifice, but it will come. And when it does, you hope that your children will be the ones to shape it, to live in it, and to build it into something new, something better, something free. The years slip by, and your children begin to grow in ways that surprise you. The girls, particularly, start to take more after you than you ever imagined. They have questions, they ask for more than what is given to them, and they wonder why the world works the way it does. They are different, you realize, from how you were at their age. They have the same quiet rebellion you once felt, but they express it differently. They are not content with simply accepting the roles they are given. They question them. They ask for more. And for the first time in your life, you feel the stirrings of something deep within you, a sense of pride, mixed with the quiet fear of what might come. You know the risks they face. You know that questioning the system, challenging the rules will not be without consequence. It wasn't without consequence for you, and it won't be for them either. But you also know that they have something you never had, the ability to choose. The world is changing, albeit slowly, and while it may still be harsh and unyielding, there are cracks beginning to appear. The rise of new ideas, of the Renaissance, of the questioning of long-held traditions, of the early stirrings of women's rights are on the horizon, and your daughters stand at the edge of this change. They will not be bound by the same constraints you were. They will not be expected to blindly follow the path of obedience and tradition. They will carve their own way, even if it means defying the very world they've known. For years you've taught them to survive, to endure, to keep going despite the weight of tradition. But now, in these quiet moments when they ask questions, when they challenge the norms, you begin to teach them something else. You teach them that their voices matter. You teach them that they can be more than what the world expects them to be. You teach them that they are not defined by their roles as wives or mothers, but by their own choices, their own dreams and their own desires. You've watched, in the quiet corners of your heart, as they've grown into young women. Women who will one day face the same challenges you did, but who will also have the opportunity to choose differently. You don't know what the future holds for them. You don't know if they will follow the same path you did, or if they will break free from the confines of tradition and find a world where they can live on their own terms. But you do know one thing. They have the ability to choose. They have the power to create their own future, to shape their own destiny, and that is something you never had. As the years unfold, you begin to see small signs of change in your village. The women, who once seemed to accept their roles without question, are starting to ask for more. They are speaking up, organizing, and, in small but significant ways, challenging the status quo. The men, for the most part, remain unchanged, steadfast in their traditional roles, but even they cannot ignore the shift that is happening, the quiet rebellion that is stirring in the hearts of their wives and daughters. You see it in the way they look at each other now, in the way they speak. They are beginning to understand that the world they've known is not the world their children will inherit. The changes are slow, so slow that they are barely noticeable, but for you, they are the beginning of something profound. You watch with both fear and hope as your daughters ask for more, as they question the world they've been born into, and you begin to wonder if this is the beginning of the end of the system that has shaped your life. Perhaps, you think, just perhaps, the world is finally ready for something different. Perhaps, you think, just perhaps, the world is finally ready for something different. Maybe your daughters will be the ones to change it all, to live in a world where they are no longer defined by their roles, but by their choices. You don't know what the future holds. You don't know if the world will ever fully change, or if your daughters will find the freedom they long for. But you do know that they are ready for it, they are strong, they are resilient, and they are willing to fight for their place in the world. You've given them the tools to survive, to endure, and now you give them the tools to thrive. You realize, as you watch them grow, that you have done something far more important than simply surviving. You have given them the gift of choice. The world may not be ready for them yet, but they are ready for it. And in that moment you know that, no matter what happens next, you have done all that you can to ensure that they will live in a world where they are free to choose their own path. The medieval world was harsh and unyielding, but it was also a world of quiet resilience, a world where women, like you, found ways to assert themselves, to survive, and to build a future. Your daughters will carry that resilience forward, and they will shape the world into something that is more than what you ever imagined. You may not have been able to break free from the constraints of tradition, but you have given them the tools to do so, and that, in itself, is a victory. The years go by, and your daughters blossom into young women, strong, intelligent, and filled with a curiosity about the world that you never had. They challenge the norms that you once accepted without question, and as you watch them, a part of you feels immense pride. They are not content to follow in your footsteps, to live the life you lived. They want more. They want to break free from the chains that have bound you for so long. But with this newfound desire for freedom comes a growing sense of unease. The world they are stepping into is still one that values obedience over independence, tradition over change. You know the risks they face. To challenge the system is to risk everything, to risk their reputations, their futures, and in some cases their lives. You have seen what happens to those who dare to defy the established order. The world does not take kindly to rebellion, and yet you cannot stop them. You cannot hold them back, not when you see the fire in their eyes, the strength in their voices. The world is changing, you know this. Slowly but surely there are cracks beginning to form in the rigid walls of medieval society. The Renaissance has begun to take root in distant cities, spreading new ideas about human rights, individuality, and freedom. Women are starting to carve out spaces for themselves, to take control of their lives in ways that were once unimaginable. You see it in the quiet, steady steps of women who have begun to learn to read, to write, to speak out. You hear rumours of women who are taking control of their finances, who are stepping into roles that were once reserved for men. The winds of change are blowing, and you know that your daughters are right at the edge of this transformation.
But as much as you hope for their freedom, you also know that change is not always kind. It is slow, painful, and fraught with danger. For every woman who has found success, there are countless others who have been punished, silenced, or erased by the very system they sought to challenge. The consequences of defying the norm are steep, and you can feel the weight of this truth bearing down on you. You fear for your daughters, knowing the risks they will face, knowing the challenges that lie ahead. You watch them grow, their voices becoming louder, their questions more pointed. They want to know why things are the way they are, why women are expected to marry, to bear children, to stay at home, while men go out into the world and make the decisions. They question the roles that have been assigned to them, and you can see the frustration building in their eyes. They want to be free, to choose their own paths, to live their own lives. And in that moment, you realize that they are the ones who will change the world. They are the ones who will break the cycle. You have taught them well, taught them to survive, to endure, to be strong, but now they will learn to fight.
And you wonder, will they succeed? Will they find a way to live the lives they want? Or will they too be trapped by the weight of tradition, by the expectations of society? You cannot say. But you do know this: they are ready. Ready to take on the world, ready to face the challenges that await them, and for the first time in a long time you feel a sense of hope, a sense that the world is on the verge of change, that the dreams you once had, the ones you had to bury deep inside, might one day become a reality for your daughters. The medieval world you've known for so long, the world of strict roles, of rigid expectations, of power held by men and tradition, is beginning to crumble. And you can feel it in your bones. The future is uncertain, but it is no longer bound by the past. Your daughters will be the ones to shape it, to build it, to tear down the walls that have held them, and you, back for so long. And as you watch them, as they grow stronger, more determined, more independent, you feel a deep sense of pride. You have given them everything you could, taught them everything you knew, and now they will go on to create something new. They will live in a world that is not defined by the limitations of the past, but by their own dreams, their own desires, their own choices. It is a strange feeling, this mix of hope and fear. You have spent your entire life living by the rules, living for the family, for tradition, and now, as your daughters stand on the precipice of change, you realize that your role has been more important than you ever imagined. You have given them the strength to fight for their futures, the courage to question what they've been told, and the belief that they can make a difference. Historians have long debated whether medieval women ever had the power to change their circumstances, or if they were simply passive victims of a system that had no place for them. Some argue that women were completely subjugated, with little hope of escape, while others suggest that women, even in the most oppressive systems, found ways to assert their power and influence. Perhaps it was in the small rebellions, the quiet acts of defiance, that women managed to carve out a space for themselves. Perhaps it was in the way they managed their households, cared for their children, or shaped their families that they exerted their power. You have been a part of that quiet rebellion. You have survived, you have endured, and now you are passing on the tools of resilience to your daughters. The world may not be ready for them yet, but they are ready for it. They are ready to fight for their futures, ready to challenge the world that has confined them for so long, and in that you see the true legacy of your life. The hope for a future where your daughters and their daughters after them will live in a world of their own making. The years roll on, and as you look at your daughters, you feel both a sense of pride and a deep concern. They are becoming the women you always hoped they would be, strong, independent, and filled with the fire of ambition. But with that ambition comes the same challenges you once faced, the same struggles you tried so hard to avoid. They are pushing against the walls of the world that has defined them, just as you did in your youth. Only now the stakes feel higher. The world is still unforgiving, and the consequences of defying the expectations placed upon them are just as real as they were for you.
You watch as they grow bolder in their actions. They begin to question everything, the roles of women in society, the idea of marriage, the very foundation of the life they've been born into. They want more, not just for themselves, but for the world. They want a future where their voices matter, where their choices are their own, and where they are not defined by the tradition of their mothers and grandmothers. And in some quiet moments, you find yourself filled with awe, watching as they challenge the boundaries of their existence with the same quiet rebellion that once lived in you. But the road ahead is not without danger. The world may be shifting, but is not yet ready for the change they seek. The village, the community, even the larger society, these forces still hold tight to the old ways. Women are expected to marry, to bear children, and to take on the roles that have been defined for them since birth. To step outside of that system is to risk everything, to invite scorn and punishment, to face the wrath of a world that is not yet ready to let go of the past. Historians have long debated the role of women in the medieval era. Were they truly trapped, bound by the unyielding grip of tradition, or did they find ways to assert their own agency, to shape their lives within the constraints of society? Some argue that medieval women were passive victims of a patriarchal system, while others believe that women exercised power in subtle, unnoticed ways. Women were not simply defined by their roles as wives and mothers, they were also caretakers of their families, managers of their homes, and sometimes the silent but steady force behind the survival of their communities. For you, the truth lies somewhere in between. You've never been passive. You've fought for your family, for your children, and for the small moments of freedom you could carve out for yourself. You've survived in a world that did not always value you, that saw you as little more than a means to an end. But even in that world, you found strength. And now, as your daughters stand on the brink of adulthood, you see that they are ready to do the same. They are ready to challenge the system, to push against the boundaries that have defined them, and to create a new future for themselves. You are proud of them, but you are also afraid. The world is still a harsh place, and the risks they face are real. They are not naive. They know what it means to defy the system. They understand the consequences of stepping outside of tradition, of challenging the roles they've been given. But they also understand something else, something that you never truly grasped at their age. They understand the value of their own voices. They understand that they have the right to speak, to choose, to live their lives on their own terms. It fills you with a strange mixture of hope and fear. You fear for their safety, for the dangers they will face as they try to break free from the constraints of their world, but you also hope that they will be the ones to change the world, to make it a place where women like them are no longer defined by their roles as wives and mothers, but by their potential, their strength, and their choices. In the quiet moments when they ask questions, when they challenge the world around them, you begin to see the shift that you've been waiting for. It's not just in them, it's in the world. The winds of change are growing stronger. And while it may still take time, you know that things are moving. The Renaissance has begun, and with it comes the promise of new ideas, new opportunities, and new freedoms. For the first time, you believe that change is possible. The world may not be ready for your daughters, but your daughters are ready for it. They are ready to fight for the future they want, to create a world where they are no longer limited by the expectations of the past. And so as you look at them, as you watch them grow into the women they are meant to be, you realize that your role has been more important than you ever imagined. You have given them the foundation they need to succeed, the strength to challenge the world, and the belief that they can create a life of their own choosing. They are no longer bound by the rules that have defined women for centuries. They are ready to live on their own terms. For the first time, you feel a sense of peace. You have done your part. You have survived, and you have given your daughters the tools they need to thrive. The world may still be a place of danger and uncertainty, but it is also a place of opportunity and change. And you know that one day your daughters will live in that world, a world where their voices are heard, where their choices are their own, and where they are free to be the women they were always meant to be. The winds of change, though slow, continue to stir. Your daughters, now fully grown, have begun to take their first tentative steps into the world beyond the confines of the family farm. They are not entirely free. How could they be? The world outside is still largely defined by the same rigid expectations that have shaped your life. But there is something different now, something that wasn't there when you were their age. There is a spark in their eyes, a fire that refuses to be extinguished. They are determined, ready to fight for the life they want, even if it means challenging the world they were born into. As you watch them, a sense of pride fills you. You've done all you can to prepare them for the world, taught them how to survive, how to endure, how to navigate the rigid traditions of medieval society. But you've also taught them to dream, to believe in their own potential, and to recognize the value of their voices. You've shown them that they don't have to accept the world as it is, that they can challenge it, change it, and carve out a place for themselves in it. But there is still fear. You know the risks they face, the dangers of defying the rules, of stepping outside the boundaries of tradition. You've seen what happens to those who dare to challenge the system, how they are punished, ostracized, and sometimes even destroyed. The road ahead for your daughters is fraught with danger. They are not naive. They understand the risks, but they also understand that change is necessary, that without defiance, nothing will ever improve. You wonder, as you watch them begin to leave the farm, if they will succeed. The world outside is a harsh place, and the stakes are high. The world may not be ready for them, but you know that they are ready for it. They are ready to fight for their future, to demand a place for themselves in a world that has always held them back. And as you watch them take their first steps into that world, you feel a bittersweet sense of both hope and fear. Historians still debate whether medieval women were truly powerless or whether they found ways to exert influence, to carve out spaces of freedom within the rigid system. Some argue that women were completely subjugated, their lives controlled by the men around them and the societal structures that dictated their worth. Others believe that women, even within such oppressive systems, found ways to wield power through their roles in the family, their ability to manage the household, and the quiet acts of rebellion that went unnoticed by the world. Perhaps it was in the way they navigated the traditions, in the small, subtle ways they challenged the norms. For you, the truth is clear. Survival is its own form of resistance. You have lived your entire life within a system that sought to define you, to limit your possibilities, and yet you have persisted, you have endured, and in doing so, you have taught your daughters to do the same. But you have also shown them that there is more to life than simply surviving. You have shown them the power of choice, the power of autonomy, and the power of defiance. They have inherited your strength, but they will also inherit your dreams. Your daughters are ready to face the world, but you are not sure if the world is ready for them. They are stepping into uncharted territory, territory that will challenge them, that will test their resolve, but you know they are prepared. They are stronger than you ever were, more determined, more willing to fight for what they believe in. They will face hardships, of course. They will face rejection, criticism, and the weight of society's expectations, but they will not back down. They will carve out their place in the world, just as you carved out yours. And so, as you watch them walk away from the farm toward a future that is unknown, you feel a sense of peace. You have done everything you can to prepare them. You have given them the tools to survive, the strength to resist, and the courage to fight for their place in the world. You've taught them to never settle, to never accept a life of obedience and submission, and most importantly, to never stop dreaming. The medieval world may still be harsh, may still be unforgiving, but it is changing. And as your daughters step into that change, you feel a sense of hope that you've never felt before. Maybe, just maybe, the world will be different for them. Maybe, just maybe, they will be the ones to break the cycle, to create a future where women are free to live their lives on their own terms. And as they walk into the unknown, you know that despite the challenges ahead, they are ready. They will not be defined by the limitations of the past. They will write their own story. And in that story, there will be no place for the constraints that have bound women like you for so long. They will be free. As you watch your daughters take their first steps into the unknown world beyond the farm, you feel a sense of bittersweet pride. You have spent your entire life living in the shadows of tradition, fulfilling your duties and adhering to the expectations placed upon you. And yet here they are, standing at the threshold of a new era, one where they will not be bound by the same rules, the same roles, the same limitations. They are ready to create a world that is their own, a world where they can be free to choose, to define their own paths, and to live lives that are not dictated by the weight of history. You think back to your own youth, to the days when you first realized that your life would not be your own. You think of the quiet rebellion that stirred in your heart, of the dreams you buried deep inside you because the world told you they were not meant to be. You think of all the things you sacrificed, your hopes, your desires, your sense of self, just to survive, just to make sure that your family endured. And now, as you watch your daughters stand tall, filled with the same quiet rebellion that once burned in you, you realize that you have given them something more than just survival. You have given them the gift of choice. They are not the same as you. They have seen the world differently. They have been taught to dream, to reach for the stars, to never accept the limitations that society has set for them. They are the product of your struggles, your sacrifices, your dreams, and now they will carry those dreams forward. They will fight for a world where women are not defined by their roles as wives and mothers, but by their ability to choose their own destinies. They will challenge the system just as you did, but they will do so in a world that is slowly but surely changing. You see the future through their eyes, bright, full of possibility, and free from the chains that once held you back. You no longer feel the weight of tradition pressing down on you. You no longer feel the suffocating grip of duty, of obligation. Your time has passed, but theirs is just beginning. They are the ones who will shape the future, the ones who will define what it means to be free. You think of the generations that came before you, the women who lived and died within the constraints of their roles, never once questioning the world they were born into. You think of the women who raised families, who worked tirelessly, who endured every hardship without ever asking for more. Their lives were not their own, but they gave everything for the ones they loved. And now, as you watch your daughters set out on their own journeys, you understand that you are part of something much larger than yourself. You are part of a legacy of survival, of resilience, and now of change. You have done your part, you have endured, you have survived, and you have given your daughters everything they need to carry the torch forward. The world they will inherit is still a world of challenges, of dangers, and of resistance, but it is also a world of possibility. And in that possibility, you see hope. Hope for a better future, hope for a world where women are no longer bound by the constraints of tradition, where they are free to live their lives on their own terms. As the years pass, you know that the fight for freedom will continue, but you also know that your daughters will be the ones to lead it. They will be the ones to break the cycle, to build a world where their voices are heard, their choices are respected, and their lives are their own. They will be the ones to create a future where women are not defined by the roles assigned to them by society, but by their own dreams, their own aspirations, and their own potential. And as you watch them walk into that future, you feel a sense of peace, knowing that you have done all you can to prepare them for what lies ahead. They are ready, and the world is ready for them. Now, as you sit by the fire, reflecting on the journey that has brought you here, you realize that the story of your life is not defined by the struggles you faced, the sacrifices you made, or the limitations you endured. It is defined by the strength you found in yourself, the resilience you built, and the legacy you passed on to your daughters. And that legacy of strength, of resistance, of hope is something that will live on long after you are gone. You have given them everything you could, and now they will carry it forward into a world where they are free to be the women they were always meant to be.